Welcome to Treasure Valley Podcast. I'm Chuck. Today's episode is brought to you by LowerGentry Studios, as always. LowerGentry Studios is a low-budget film company that specializes in high-quality productions. You can catch their upcoming web series, Canyon County, in December of this year, 2018. Today, I'm excited. I sit down with Tyler Carson. He's a friend of mine and an amazing violinist slash musician slash adventurer. Enjoy. Sometimes it hurts people's ears.
I lost my microphone. Just a second.
Your ear
It's
microphone.
very nice to be here.
Welcome. We're on the record, so that's included.
That's a record player?
No, on the record as far as like this is now historically documented.
On a record player?
No, on just a digital player.
No, say what you mean.
Listen to the words coming out of my mouth.
I'm confused.
This is recording. That's what all the red lights are for.
Oh!
Yeah. Don't they have that?
I challenge you to a one-note duel.
Okay. Would you like some background music for it?
Well, yeah.
I mean, do you want a drum beat? This is my favorite drum beat that's pre-programmed into this Casio.
0115.
No, it's 04.
Oh,
You ready?
second favorite. Yeah. Oh. Would this be better with context? I think I stole your line. Only the dogs could hear the last one.
That was, I felt it.
There was a reason we did that.
Yeah,
I
the
think.
one note song.
Yes, because you told me that we were going to do a one-note song, then
Yeah,
I just went for it.
I think what better way to use your violin talents
Maybe
than
that
to just
proves
have you
the
play
point.
the single note over and over again. What's the best way to showcase your violin playing skills?
Let's put them in a box in one note.
Just G.
Yeah.
There it is. Welcome to
Thank
Treasure
you.
Valley Podcast.
Thank you.
Do you want to play a little ditty, and I can put the Casio to rest. I think that counts.
Does that count as a ditty?
Yeah.
Yo, ditty. Well, we before we started, it was pointed out that perhaps the most important thing about playing the violin is the head movement.
Oh yeah.
Because, if you're really into something, maybe that's more the facial expression, but
It's both.
with classical music, it's maybe a little more the facial expression. Maybe. Yeah, if you're a guitar player, I think it's more in the head.
It's in the shoulders, I think, because the first thing you decide when you play guitar is high or low. You know what I mean?
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah.
That
Was like a Dean Ween. Was that Dean Ween or Gene Ween? Dean Ween. There's somebody off camera here that we can bounce questions off of. Who's
I
not
can't
gonna
see them,
speak.
but that's cool. Okay, if you say so.
There's someone off camera for me. That was one of his lines. Either you go above the dick or below the dick, and that's what guitar players have to wear their guitar. And then from that point
Right.
forward, it's always in the shoulders. That's how I always felt, But
yeah.
violinists definitely do a lot of head movements.
Yes.
Why is that?
I'm trying to think of the musicians that are doing the head movements. Conductors do a lot of that. Pianists do a lot of that.
Yeah.
Well, it's a classical thing, really. I think is really what it is.
Yeah.
That's usually where you see those sorts of movements of passion, very mental passion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing a very good job of it. All this was funny before we started the
I know.
podcast.
You should practice your head movements more. Should we get started with your 20 questions?
Okay, you lead the way from now on.
Okay. I will. My first question was going to be to ask you to jam for a moment. We kind of covered that. Is there anything that you wanted to play in particular?
Not really. Not right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you could continue to hold the violin, though, that would be
that
would be instrumental to the overall vibe of this podcast.
Yeah, you'll never see it out of my hands.
So
this has set me apart in Radio Land.
I have musical questions. Okay. I have questions about Canada, and then I have other questions that are just other.
About redheads?
No.
I'm just trying to think of the last obvious thing. That I
didn't want to put you too much in a box. Start with the one-note song and then branch out from there.
Yeah.
How tired will your voice be after this interview?
Oh, it depends how good the questions are.
Oh, okay.
Actually.
All right.
But that's serious in a way because I speak better when I'm motivated. When something happens that I really care about, I'll start talking. If I am thinking too much, my voice will get constricted.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't want, the more you think.
The more off topic I get about something, that if I'm getting too mental about something, that's one pattern. See, where if I'm just extraneous talking, my voice will just turn off.
Oh, okay.
It's true. The reason why I asked that for people that wouldn't know is that I have a voice condition called spasmodic dysphonia. There, you see, it just went off in the middle, and it causes muscle spasms in the throat, and it's part of a larger condition called dystonia, which can affect anywhere in your body, muscle spasms, and I'm actually recovered to a point that doctors didn't think I would be able to. They said I need Botox every 6 weeks for the rest of my life in order to be able to talk. And I would never get a full deep range again. You can hear when my voice is working that it's a fairly deep baritone voice. And so it's kind of amazing that I've got it back to the point that I have. 5 years ago, I would always be talking like this. That would be as much as you'd get. So
you're like the perfect guest to invite over.
Right.
When somebody wants quiet in the corner, somebody there just listen.
Sure. I thought you were going to say
picked up your listening skills.
Perfect guest to bring on a podcast. Yeah, let's bring it on a narrative-driven medium. Perfect. Could have mentioned that before you showed up.
I'm pretty sure we can run some compression on this and get all those levels up, but we'll see. Do you have a preference for types of questions? I mean, I don't have to go in a specific order here, but I wanted to talk to you about music. I wanted to talk to you about Canada, and I wanted to talk to you about other things.
I think you should just dive in wherever you feel.
Okay. And what rhymes with violin?
Oh, peregrine.
Oh, like the falcon.
Or like peregrine toque. Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the falcon.
There's a bird.
Yeah, peregrine falcon.
I know.
Oh, okay. That might be who he was named after. Who knows? That's good. Do you have anything else?
It was pretty good, especially because that wasn't the one I had thought of when I accidentally saw your questions earlier. And I thought, dang, that's actually a hard question. What does rhyme with violin?
It's a tough one. What about stringed instruments in general? When it comes to stringed instruments, does size matter?
Does size matter? Okay. Yes.
Okay. You're just going to leave it at that? I guess I did write a lot of yes/no questions. I probably should plan this ahead a little bit better. What are you going to do? I'm going to bring someone into my studio room and then ask them a bunch of 20 times yes or no.
Yeah.
This is just statistics. I'm just wanting to get statistics out of these questions.
Well, that's going to make this easy.
Yeah. I want to know how often people say yes and how often they say no.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
It also depends if you're Canadian or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'll influence it.
That'll be good. I'll be able to get a good baseline, international baseline after this interview.
Yes.
Then I'll have some more data to crunch. So can you elaborate, please, on the size mattering of the stringed instruments?
No.
Is there a smaller stringed instrument than a violin?
Good question. Actually, that's an interesting question, and I'm sure after the interview I'll have a very clear answer. But there's probably little guitars that are maybe like there's a Spanish guitar but I don't think it is smaller. In the end, it'd be close to the same string length. But I guess what I would say about the size thing is that you'd be surprised that the violin is the loudest and it's the smallest.
It's the loudest?
Yeah, yes, it
Oh.
is. In as much that it will carry the furthest.
Okay.
Because it's a higher pitch.
Yeah.
Although whales, that maybe my science is wrong on this, because whales, when they're talking long distance, is it their low tones that carry farther?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because they have those
they have
low
longer
wavelengths
sine wave
that they send
yeah.
underneath the water to communicate with each other about, I think that's during migration, if I'm not mistaken.
But with the violin, yeah, it carries over everything. So that's one of the miraculous things about the Stradivari violins and things like that, is that if it's a really well made instrument, it'll carry to the back of the hall and the right way of playing it.
I saw an interesting thing about Stradivarius violins and how they're trying to remake them. And what they found out was that during the time he was making his violins, it was like a mini ice age.
Oh, yeah.
And so to make the best modern day replicas, they have to go to the coldest climates to get whatever wood that's made out of those trees, because they suffer. They have the thing is the annual the width of the rings was a lot tinier on the wood on those violins, and so they can make a much more accurate representation of those if they go to a very cold climate, because he was in Italy, right?
Yeah.
And then but it was mini ice age, and so like the winters were extremely long, and so these trees were not growing very quickly on an annual basis that he was using. I don't know if you know the type of wood that he used, but
well, I believe that he always used the standard, which is spruce on the top and maple on the back.
okay.
Bows, I've heard bows talked about like that because they use Pernambuco wood, which is from South America mostly, and the wood nowadays is much more difficult to get in high quality.
Oh,
yeah, because of various environmental factors.
have you ever had the opportunity to play a Stradivarius?
No, I played a Guarneri though, and Guarneris are equivalent basically.
But I just haven't heard of them, so are you sure they're equivalent?
Because that's definitely the measuring stick. Yes, how famous is it?
Well, I don't know. That's cool though.
When we apply that to everything in our world, that would definitely hold water. Yes, absolutely. Well, I've never heard of that person.
Well, this is America, man.
Well,
let's do some Canadian questions then. Speaking of the importance of fame, what are 5 uses for maple syrup?
Well, there's a lot more than 5. You're clearly from the U.S.
Yeah. Am I limiting you with
this? That's a very
this?
limited question. Yes,
okay.
Exactly. But I'll give you some examples that are kind of interesting. The one that is most interesting to me, it's not the most, but it surprised me, is you can make these amazing popsicles with maple syrup by, if you have snow, which is usually around trees that are making maple syrup, you compact it a little bit, make a little hole of whatever design you want, and you pour maple syrup in it. It'll freeze, and you put a stick in there, you get a lollipop that's maple syrup lollipop.
Oh.
It's kind of amazing, right?
So you just do it outside
like
anywhere.
A sucker or whatever, yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
okay. Oh, sweet. I'm going to have to try that next time it snows. And I'm around maple syrup.
If you go to Quebec, where most of the maple trees are in Canada, they have huge festivals that are based on it, and they'll have various things that you can do like that, which is a lot of fun. The other thing I'll say about maple syrup is that if you drink, now I don't know in terms of bacteria if this is a healthy thing to do, but I really enjoyed it.
Don't try this at home, or do.
If you tap the maple tree, which is how you get it, it comes out as water basically, and so it literally just flows out and it'll fill up a bucket over the course of several hours, I believe, or days. But when it comes out, you can drink it directly, and it's delicious.
Really?
It's like,
but this is
I'm
they
not
add
even going to
sugar.
say more because now I got a marketing idea. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, careful.
I've stopped talking now.
Okay.
No,
I'll just mute it. You can tell me.
Because what happens is the water gets boiled down. So it takes days and days of boiling to evaporate the water out. And what you're left with is the syrup.
Oh,
That's how
okay.
I make maple syrup.
So it's actually just really good, just tree juice.
It's just tree juice.
Okay.
Exactly.
That's good to know.
Yeah,
Do you have more tips for us? That was only two.
I know, but
We can go on forever about maple syrup. Should we move on? Is that
I'm going to go ahead and answer the questions the way I want to, and
okay.
maybe if it's not the way that you asked, I mean, it's not very Canadian of me, but I'm in the U.S. now, so
You're adapting to the
care.
culture. That's good.
Yes, adapt and survive.
So I do have a lot of music questions for you.
Okay, good.
Some of them are less goofy than others,
Okay.
but I do want to know if Beethoven or Mozart was better. Who was the better of those two?
Well, everybody wants to know that.
Yeah.
How would I know the answer to that?
I just figured you did. Isn't that part of like classical training?
Yeah.
Musical training, they tell you. But you have to is it like the Mormon church? Unless you get up so many levels, you don't find out.
Yeah. Well, that's actually, yes. But I can't say more than that or articulately.
Oh, okay.
Technically.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be careful. I'll tread carefully. Can you pick between
okay. Yeah. Going to the next question. I would tell you that it really depends on your mood. If you want to, rock and roll, get the emotions going in a rajastic way, as our Indian colleagues would say, in energy healing, which means movement, then you go with Beethoven. If you're feeling more romantic and soft, then you go with Mozart.
Was it true that he was kind of considered like the original like rock Beethoven, because he had some stubborn lines that he wrote?
Well, he did some weird things, like he took all the legs off his piano because he was deaf at a certain point in his life, and he would actually feel the vibration of the piano through the floor, and that helped him to write his music.
Oh.
Which is actually really interesting in terms of how I perceive music, which is I grew up with it in a way that it kind of becomes part of my experience of life, so that I just take music for I was going to go on a tangent, but I'm not thinking of what I want to say specifically. Music is vibration, and life is vibration, essentially. If you
Are you going to get into string theory here?
A little bit,
okay.
Because if you consider on that level, then music is life and life is music. And so I couldn't choose Beethoven or Mozart as better, because it depends on what mood you're in, how you want to vibrate. And then I'll continue from there with other extemporization if it comes up in the questions.
Okay, well then I was going to ask you next about the Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin. Which one of those two? Are you going to give me the same answer on that one?
No, I'll try not to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
because it's Led Zeppelin, right?
That's a little easier, obviously. Yeah,
Okay.
Exactly. I mean, if you have any musical appreciation for working hard, you're obviously going to take the band full of musicians over the band full of drug addicts. But ironically, that's not what necessarily translates for people.
Yeah.
Right? Because music primarily for people, I think, is somewhat of a base level experience. So we want music to help us exercise. We want music to help us relax. We want music to help distract us from whatever we're thinking about. And if you look at that on a brain level, there's a book called "This Is Your Brain on Music," and it basically has to do with dopamine levels. So your brain is always analyzing what it's listening to, and it's trying to predict what comes next.
Yeah,
and that's an evolutionary thing.
Yeah, so I was actually watching a documentary about the brain and dopamine release. So if you are expecting something to happen, like let's say you make a plan, like later on today I'm going to go on a hike, right? And if the hike is better than what you expected, your brain releases a whole bunch of dopamine.
Yeah.
But if it's worse, then it constricts the amount of dopamine that's, because there's always a certain amount floating in your brain. It's like constantly like producing it at a certain rate, and it'll accelerate it if something's better than what you thought it was going to be, or it'll dial it back if it's worse. Right. And so in the future it'll persuade you to avoid certain things versus like go into those. And they think it's something that evolved specifically to have us repeat
because
behavior.
every time we have something good that happens, we get more dopamine.
Yeah.
Right.
Which could be like a hunter scavenger type thing if you run into this.
Hey, we got the deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is where we're going
or
back.
You're coming
again.
home with a few berries, and it's like
don't go back to that bush anymore.
Exactly. And so we're dopamine fiends in our brain, right? And that's why mindfulness actually is becoming so useful, because mindfulness helps us to not have expectation. So if we don't have expectation, our dopamine levels will be more steady.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And so depression,
so like meditation,
depression and anxiety has to do directly with our dopamine. So that's what antidepressants are. Is they regulate your release of dopamine, so you can't get overly excited and overly sad. And so to come back to music and tie that together, when we're listening to music, if our mind is doing its evolutionary thing of I want to know what's coming next.
Yeah,
and if I know what's coming next, I'm going to get a hit of dopamine. And therefore, if we listen to music that's predictable, we end up getting a lot of dopamine, and that's pop music. It becomes popular.
I think we had this conversation a couple months ago.
Probably.
Yeah. So pop music is popular because of the dopamine release, because we know the refrain's coming, and
exactly,
it's super predictable.
Right.
Whereas the more complicated music, that's why it takes a while to get into. You need to practice, and you need to.
Well, and this goes back to the vibration thing I was touching on, which is that if it's music that isn't predictable, we're not getting the dopamine thing, but it still has an effect on us. And that's why classical music, for example, is more like that, is that you have to develop an appreciation for it. They talk about that a lot in school. You have to develop appreciation for music. And so when we develop an appreciation, we start to listen differently. We experience the music rather than getting these little sugar highs, basically.
Yeah.
And when we're experiencing music, that means we're experiencing the vibration of the author or the musician, the composer, the players, and they are experiencing their life. You know, when a musician plays, if it feels emotional, it's because their life is in the strings. Like, my music got much better when I lost my voice, because I realized I couldn't write a song and tell the story. I was trying to write pop songs, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was, predictably trying to create a storyline for people. When I couldn't do that, I started playing my music differently. I actually had people come up and say, I love the stories you tell with your violin. Which was actually because I traveled to England for the first time. And in England, they have a history of folk music in their culture. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I've heard about this, actually.
So strongly that everyone is aware that folk music is a thing. Like, they've all heard it, and they even have some level of appreciation for it. And so, therefore, they have an appreciation listening to a fiddle player that, you can hear a story in that music, as opposed to a lot of North Americans just go, at best, they go, is that Irish music?
Yeah.
Because they only have a visual picture of a fiddle player in a pub. That's Irish music.
I have he's our godfather, Michael James, that went to Ireland to learn he went there with his violin to play, learn all the folk music. And he said when he went there, it was super annoying because he was an American and they all wanted to play rock.
Yeah.
And so he was there to try to learn how to learn all that folk music culture. And he's like, and then I would just end up in a rock jam session.
This is exactly the problem, because pop music is addictive.
Yeah.
And it's easy. It's easy to get the idea of rock and roll and pop music. It's 1, 4, 5. It's predictable. And it's repetitive. Within 3 minutes, for crying out loud, it's repetitive. No wonder we have a short attention span, because every time, and it's actually more repetitive than that. Good pop music is repetitive from within the first verse. There's themes that are happening. And a good writer will have them, and a good band will work that inside of all the music that they're playing. So it's just, the whole thing is just this constant swarm, orgiastic experience of dopamine hits, and just like, that's, and it dumbs us down.
That's why I just wanted to play a one-note song.
Right.
Because I just wanted that dopamine hit right away. It needs to be repetitive as soon as it starts.
When we did it in rehearsal, I think I joked and said this is becoming a lot of tension, because we actually developed a story with it, and we should maybe even do that right now. We should play it again,
okay,
and listen to the story that happens between us.
Okay,
In fact,
Should I change the beat this time?
Let's make it obvious. We'll start off not telling a story.
Okay.
We'll just play a one-note song, which everybody thinks, are you serious? How are you going to... That sounds like the dumbest idea ever.
Should I do you want a drum beat on the background of that?
Sure, it doesn't matter.
Okay, well, let's try 6.
Okay, the favorite.
Oh, it's got a little conga in there.
See, and for the first couple of times, this is almost groovy, right?
Mm-hmm. And then it gets...
But now it gets stale.
Yeah.
And we get bored.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing intriguing our mind to start going, where are we?
Yeah.
Right. So now we'll add a simple note.
Okay.
That's going to do the same thing. At first, it'll interest us because it's changed something.
Yeah.
But then it's going to quickly become boring.
Okay. Do you want to hit the G this time? I'll follow your lead.
It's almost groovy, but you really want something else to happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Like an organ?
Why not? And I can't help but start telling a story with you because it vibrates different. Try and get in my story more. Listen to me and don't think about what you're doing. You gotta keep playing though. So it's kind of a goofy story, but there is some you can feel that the thing changes.
Yeah.
Right. And that's as simple as it gets, but the principles are the same. And so
you recognize something, you make a slight modification,
and
it's almost
becomes
like
interesting.
It's like a super fast evolution.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Totally.
Cool.
So that's really fun. That's and so yeah, that's the Rolling Stones are 1, 4, 5 rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
Led Zeppelin is all over the place. I mean, there's time changes, and then the sheer musicianship.
Yeah.
You know.
Plus, Stairway to Heaven is like one of the greatest songs ever.
And then they add some pop, and that's the only reason why anyone knows them.
Yeah.
Is because they had some songs that somehow captured our interest, and it was amazing because they still had heart. They were real artists, you know. And in music, that gets thrown around all the time. As soon as you get on stage, you're an artist.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
No.
You're not always. You're not an artist unless you're expressing something that's unique to yourself.
Sometimes you're just a performer.
Exactly. That's the vast majority.
We should probably stay on the music topic.
Okay.
Or no, let's talk about what are the advantages of a bisexual strip club?
Oh dear, that's a long way away.
I know.
I think. How could I?
Or maybe it's connected.
How could I connect it?
Yeah.
I know why you're asking this because we've been hanging out for the weekend, and this is a seriously inside joke. But you know, I guess everybody wins at a bisexual strip club. So it's like the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin in the same concert.
you get it
all.
Everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing wrong with pop music. Like I don't want to sound like I'm knocking that, or even performers versus artists. There's nothing wrong with that. I just want to be clear that there's a difference.
Why isn't there not a bisexual strip club yet? You know what I mean? Like I haven't heard of it. Is there?
Right.
There should be.
I mean, basically, you're talking about having naked men and naked women at the same place,
yeah, just
right?
a bunch of nudity.
Oh, it's just that's called a sex club, I think. Actually.
Oh, totally different market. The cost of admission there is much higher,
right? Or lower.
Or yeah, exactly.
Quite likely.
You got to know the knock on the door to get in.
Yeah,
they don't just let anybody into those places.
Was that a Led Zeppelin thing? Knock, knock, knock. Oh no, that's a different band. It was a Stairway to Heaven. It got away.
So let's say that you weren't never allowed to play violin again. What are you gonna grab? What instrument are you gonna grab?
Terrible
next?
thing to say.
Yeah. What would you do?
Well, that's a great question. In that, what happened for me as a musician when I lost my voice was I started looking at the violin differently. First, it was a life raft because I thought I needed to be a singer in order to have a career so I could finally make money doing this. And when I did lose my voice to the point that I couldn't sing anymore, the universe, which is forever efficient, always perfectly efficient, threw in a major psychological breakdown as well. You could basically call it a nervous breakdown. It was just stress that my conscious mind could not deal with anymore.
Yeah.
And so anxiety out of control. And actually what's funny is that I didn't even know I had anxiety up until the point I started having chronic panic attacks.
Oh, wow.
So bad that I didn't leave my house for 2 months. And
Dang.
after that, I didn't go out by myself other than walk around up and down the street at short ways, several driveways, without someone else in my family, my immediate family, somebody that helped me feel really stable. Because otherwise, I literally felt like I was in pieces.
It's amazing how anxiety, you don't realize what anxiety is until you get pushed to that point where it's just like completely ridiculous.
Yes.
And you're like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
Am I having a heart attack?
And when it's a panic attack,
yeah.
you don't even know what's going on. You're just
like-
everything is dying.
Like, I need to go to the hospital right now. What's going on? It's like, and then, after you get through that point, it's kind of nice because you're like, oh, I'm just a little anxious right now.
Right.
About whatever. I need to quit thinking about things this way.
Yeah.
Anyway, so your mental breakdown, you're going to be a
right.
famous singer.
Don't distract me from telling you all about that.
Yeah.
But what it led me into was meditation, and because when you're really anxious, one of the best things you can do is just stop doing anything. I suppose I would say, though, that if you're really anxious and verging on a panic attack, that's really difficult to do, and that's not necessarily the best thing to do. But when you're in the really highly stressed zone, which tends between those points, between panic attacks, sometimes the most relieving thing we can do is close our eyes and stop doing anything and just connect to our breath and bring us to somewhere other than our brain. All that is, in my opinion, is that we're stopping being with our thinking mind. And as soon as we do that, we come back to some other place, which we've forgotten about in our society, which is that we have a knowledge base in our body that is I. When I say I, we know it's not just the word that we think about, because we can think about ourselves in third person. We do it all the time. Yeah. Or second person. And so if we can come into that place, then we calm down. And when I did that with music, when I was in my life raft of a violin, like, what can I do? And people started saying, I love the story that you're telling. Suddenly I started to realize that that music could communicate in a way that I had no idea. It would connect us as human beings. This whole thing that we've forgotten about. We're so polarized about our thoughts. Yeah. And we're completely in our mental minds right now, as Western society, and we've forgotten how to connect with each other as humans. But when we're unhappy when we're by ourselves for too long. Yeah. Right? So there's some inherent, really important value of just being with other people. So it's not the fact that we don't have anyone to talk to. It's this feeling of being with someone else, right? Yeah. And so I connected to that through my music, so that suddenly I realized if I play from that place, then other people would experience me feeling like who I am, not who I think I am. And then they actually ended up feeling like that too.
So like a meditative type state is what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's a meditative kind of state. And if we consider meditation simply to be an awareness of our thoughts versus our experience, a step away from our thinking mind.
I started meditating like just a few months ago, I think, or maybe about 6. And so I've been dabbling in it, and it's really interesting because you don't realize, the way I think about it is like your brain is in like a jar. Cool. And it's all we're getting is all of this, and it has all these tentacles that are just hanging out of it, and it's just getting lit up. Anything you touch is lighting it up, and then it's sending the signal bouncing around inside of it over and over again. The light is hitting your eyeballs and sound hitting your ears, and it's like all of these things are just all these stimuli are hitting it, and we don't know how to tease apart like what we should be thinking about. And I feel like almost fatalistic about the whole process, because it's like you think that you have like this free will, or you have this feeling of free will and this this feeling of action, but when you sit down and meditate, you realize that all those things are popping, and you can't stop it.
Right.
You can't turn it off very easily. You can with some work.
But you can discover that you're human, and that it's happening, and that as soon as we just simply realize that, then we go to another place altogether.
Yeah, just acceptance of the fact that that's what it is.
Oh, look at that light show.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool, actually. I feel like playing something. Can I play something for you?
Yeah, do it.
So I'm not, because like, in fact, we've been doing a lot of talking. And so one of the things that I like to do is with music is I just like to go to music, because that helps me come out of my mental state.
Okay.
and other people do yoga for it, but so even doing just a little bit like that, I feel different. I feel better. Dude, do I seem different? A little bit?
Well, it's like more relaxed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Totally.
cool.
Yeah.
How long did it take? Now I have a whole different set of questions.
Okay.
Mastery of getting the sound from your head out of your instrument
Great
is something
question.
that I've never achieved because of lack of discipline on the guitar. You know, do you feel like, is that something that is actually reachable, or are you always just pushing for that extra 0.00001% of that 100% like
freedom
of yeah?
I actually have really good news, which is that I think anyone can do it.
Oh, okay.
And we actually do it by going straight to the problem area, which is the brain.
Okay.
So it's a system of judgment. And that's all it is. If once we practice not judging ourselves, then we can get to a point where like, I haven't done this yet, but I would love to get hooked up to an EEG machine and watch my vitals change when I start playing music in this way. Because I can feel it, and you can probably see it on my face and stuff with the camera. And it's just it physiologically changes us when we're no longer analyzing, if I say this thing, is it going to be good or bad?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that's what the brain does. It's a computer that records everything that happens in our life, and then it analyzes the results. And then every time we step outside, it's going through that whole series of possibilities. And it's trying to help us choose the one that's going to lead us in the best direction. And so that's exhausting. And it's why as adults we become less free. Children have an open state of mind because they haven't collected a lifetime of experiences. And also
doubts and second
obligations
guessing,
where they think they have to get from here to here, therefore we have to choose the safest route to get there, and that's why things like motivational talks make a difference, or your own pep talk, that if a person chooses to have a positive attitude, they will have a better outcome than someone that doesn't, but they're still not going to necessarily feel as free as someone who practices meditation really successfully, for example, and has relieved themselves of judgment to a level that you just won't get to unless you spend time cultivating that practice. So that's what meditation is. We start off with just the notion that there's thoughts that are separate from us, and then we start to learn how to let them happen and be more and more disengaged. And so a meditator would learn how to play this music much faster than someone who hasn't done meditation. But if you want to learn meditation, it could also be really good to practice music in the way that I would show you. So, for example, what I often tell people who are learning to play but have an interest in playing what I call living music, because this is music that is of me. I'm not concerned about the notes that I play. I'm only concerned if it's coming from me and not through my mind. And so I would say if you can play a simple piece on a piano, go to it, break it right down. Just go to one note, the first note of it, and play it a number of times until you get bored or you wonder why you're doing it. And as soon as that happens, notice it and keep doing it.
Okay.
Okay. And then until it comes up again, you think something else. This is stupid. Why am I doing it? And keep doing it. Okay. And do that to a point that you start to notice this exercise between, am I in my head judging myself, or am I in the experience of touching the piano? Am I in the experience of breathing while I'm touching the piano? Am I in the experience of dreaming about this piece that's wants to emerge? Like maybe I feel really a desire for the next note to come. And when you truly feel a desire for the next note to come, not from your mind because you want to get the thing done, but your body's ready to have the next note, then try the next note and do just that one, same way, or go back to the other one. And so you can see probably the way just that my body changes when I'm imagining myself doing it. I kind of my state of mind changes. I'm in an altered state almost in a sense. State of mind is a better way.
Do you think that's ubiquitous amongst great musicians?
I think great musicians, absolutely. They would all understand. They would relate. Not everyone puts it into words what they do. In fact, a lot of artists hate talking about what they do because it's an inherent thing that they've just stumbled into, or they were born into it. It's their natural nervous system way of being. In fact, that's usually why you get artists that seem a little loopy, because they're operating on a different system. They're not trying to get from here to here. They want to know where they are. And what is that? That's like, and I have so many artist friends, and before I went into this meditation thing, I couldn't reach them. Like I was pals with them and they were pals with me, but we couldn't reach each other. It was really interesting.
So you think that certain artists are born with the nervous system that puts them in the moment almost exclusively? Okay.
Certainly through their medium, they go into the moment. When they're outside of their medium, they tend to be lost. Okay. Because they don't have any guiding principle, any guiding focus to help stabilize a mind that is very free. That makes sense.
Interesting.
So I would often see my friends that were incredible songwriters and things like that. I'd try to emulate, and my songs always you just tell they were never even close, even though I'd have the tone and the rhythm and the melody or whatever. And then when we'd go walking down the street, you'd think they have ADD or something. And I suppose clinically they might have or something. Yeah. But really they were just processing their stimuli differently. And then they happen to have found a channel for it. And so likewise, I think anyone can become an artist, because it's a channel is just what you love to do. Like what's your passion? What do you, passion is an overused term. So I would just say, what do you find yourself engaged in? If you look at a course of a week or a day or a month, is there one or two things that you often find yourself doing? And if that's it, I would pay attention to that and question, why do I find myself doing that a lot? And then that usually will start to open up into something else.
So we can all get there.
Right.
It just takes time.
Totally.
Well, I was actually analyzing it technically though too. And then you completely subverted my assumption.
Okay. Yeah. Like
but that's good.
How to get to, as a musician, to do that?
To master the notes. But your argument is not necessarily about mastery.
Right. That would be a different question to say, like, how do you become a great, like when I do it, I'm more than just the living music part. But to be an artist that's all that it is.
Okay.
It's just simply, are you truly expressing yourself? You know, and then if you want to become a well-known artist, then you better add some fancy stuff on top of it, you know, something of interest. But you know, there's really great spiritual teachers who do not add anything interesting, but people flock to them because they're coming from a place that nobody else gets to. They're like, how are you just so chill all the time? Or, you know, what is it about, you know, people describe, like, some people are magnetic, or they have this experience around, you know.
Chill, genuineness is...
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good lesson. I feel like some of these questions are kind of goofy, but maybe we
That's
should
all
just,
right.
maybe
Go
we should
for
just
it.
trudge right ahead.
Absolutely.
We talked about that. Let's go back to Canada. We haven't talked about universal health care. Does it suck?
Oh, you mean personally we haven't talked about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because on this podcast we definitely haven't yet.
No.
Well, you're talking to an artist, so I immediately want to go back to, like, what is healthcare? You know, healthcare is the care of your health, and who's most responsible for that? The person who's most in touch with your health, right? So it starts with ourselves, you know, and it's amazing the more I've thought in this manner of analyzing life, because I never had a 9-to-5 job. I never had any security as a result. I just find that the more I integrate something in myself, the more it shows up in my life. So, for example, if I'm doing proper healthcare, then I'm eating well, and then I might be talking to people who also eat well and have an interest in it, and then I might find someone. I find it all the time, someone who knows something about health that my doctor had no idea about. You know, they're like, oh no, I cured that by eating this, you know, or I cured it by eating that. And often you'll have conflicting things. So one person says eat nothing but lettuce, the other person says eat nothing but meat, and they might both be right. And so it's not, the only thing that matters is that I started out caring about my health, and I found myself in conversation with people, and then I'll find my way forward with it. And so, and here I'm finding myself in a much healthier place, right? And I dare say that the farther, if everyone does that, then, like, think about it. If everyone did that, then there would be an industry for people who provide nutrition advice in a way that there isn't right now. You know, I've seen stories about doctors that are sending. There's one kid, I don't remember, but it was some major story in, like, a reputable source. This kid had all kinds of symptoms, and they couldn't figure it out. They sent him through batteries of tests, thousands. I can't even imagine how many hundreds of thousands of dollars our bureaucratic health system would have spent on this kid. Yeah, it wasn't until, like, after all of it and the doctor had given up that they said, so somehow it came up, what do you eat? And the kid says pizza and Pepsi. Ooh. And what kind of pizza? No, like pepperoni pizza and Pepsi. And honest to goodness, that's the real life tale. And then, you know, amazing.
They gave him some broccoli.
Exactly. And his body went back to normal.
Apple.
You know, and which is miraculous.
Wow.
He didn't deserve to have that happen, you know. But our bodies are incredible. And humans are incredible. We're just filled with possibility. You know, that we're just endlessly creative. Our bodies are endlessly miraculous. We just have to give them the chance. And again, coming back to the brain thing, like, we're always thinking we have to go to past experience and put that in front of us to minimize our chances of failure, right? But that's really gotten us stuck. I think we've taken that as far as we can carry it, you know? The only way to move forward now is to wonder what happens in the areas that we don't understand. You know, and so, you know, if I want to fix healthcare, I should probably start with me. And if everyone does that, then we're going to have a whole bunch of people that are managing their healthcare by having fun conversations with their friends, you know, and maybe that reduces the burden on the health system, and maybe that puts the big pharmacare out of business, or they have to change their business is what they would do. Yeah. And next thing you know, now we don't even have to change our healthcare system. We've got all the resources we already need. Yeah. It's just that nobody thought to think about it differently. We always thought, well, I better make sure I get insurance so that if I get sick, there's a minimum chance of me getting killed.
Dang. You're pretty reasonable. Sounds like a libertarian artist.
Does it?
Yeah, careful.
Well, yeah, I mean,
but that's it's almost like a libertarian viewpoint on something.
Sure.
Because like the libertarian, which I'm a recent convert, is about personal, individual, responsibility. But if you look at it from a holistic perspective,
it's actually the most. Taking care of ourselves is the most generous thing that we can do for everyone around us. It's just that we've forgotten how to do that.
Well, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
The most generous way you can take care of other people is to make sure that your garden's in order.
Right. Totally.
So true.
And I honestly think that the opposite happens when we try to take care of everyone. Then we don't take care of ourselves, and now no one's taking care of us, and because we can't take care of other people to a large extent, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't take care of the kid with Pepsi and pizza. He's probably seen other people eat food. He's got to choose to do that himself, right?
Yeah. Put down the Pepsi and the pizza. I want to know what it was like growing up in Victoria.
Victoria's on Vancouver Island, which is on the west coast of Canada, and it's kind of an isolated place. Not like Alaska isolated. But
there's no roads going in, right?
No, exactly. There's no bridge. So there is only ferry service that goes to it. But the whole island is quite large. It takes about 12 hours or more to drive it. If it was on a freeway, doing 60 miles an hour, it'd probably take 8 hours to go from top to bottom, and it'd take about 2 hours to go widthwise.
Oh,
so. It's not huge. It's not tiny.
Bigger than Hawaii, then.
Sure. Yeah, much bigger. And it has everything on it. Well, that's probably the best thing about it is that maybe it doesn't have a desert. It doesn't have any desert landscape. Except Victoria is a little bit of a Mediterranean kind of climate in terms of the amount of rain it gets.
Yeah.
So it's actually fairly dry compared to Vancouver, where all the rain slams against the coastal mountains.
Oh, okay.
So, but in the way that affected me is that I think it helped me to do my own thing. Mm-hmm. A lot of Victorians are a little bit quirky, especially in the artist community. There's a lot of musicians that never leave Victoria because they can actually make a living playing in restaurants for $100 a night and teaching kids, the instrument that they play, and that's pretty amazing. That's utopic in a lot of ways, As of like the last 5 years, that's a lot harder because in Victoria, the real estate has gone up a lot. Yeah. But that's not a big deal. We've got a big island that's unpopulated. We have 1 million people in that space. And let me tell you, it's mostly empty.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of small towns that you can move off to. And artists are always doing that. The Village in New York, Hayden Ashbury. We're always going to where it's quirky because we feel free there.
Yeah.
We're not restrained to the grid of suburbia.
Yeah.
It's just natural. And so I don't worry about that. I just look at Victoria when I grew up was really quite wonderful. I could go from one gig and then there'd be a later gig playing somewhere else, and I'd go and sit in with my buddies and have a beer, and I'd learn how to play jazz just by doing that,
Oh, dang.
Or my version of it. I'm not a jazzer.
So there's a lot of music on that island.
And unfortunately in Victoria, it's dying out. As the money's come in, it's died out. And, I think that's probably true in our world right now, is that as soon as we get commercial influences, and I don't want to say commercial specifically, that's just a broad way to describe what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. As soon as we have a lot of economic energy happening, then that becomes the focus.
Yeah.
Right. And as soon as we do that, then everybody goes into their animal brain of, well, I'm investing $1 million into this house that should be only worth about 100,000.
Yeah.
I better make sure that my neighborhood stays clean or whatever.
Yeah.
And we lose a lot of creative possibilities. So a lot of those venues, I went back this last year, and I go back and forth a lot. Mm-hmm. But recently there's been a big shift, and a lot of those key venues are gone, or at least they don't have music anymore.
Weird.
It's just gone. And I called it to ask about it. Oh yeah, every day we get somebody calling about music, but no, the owners decided they didn't want to do it. New owners bought it.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. So
that's a major bummer.
Mm-hmm.
Should we talk about some RV stuff?
Oh yeah, because I've been traveling in a fifth wheel for the last year.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because my wife and I have been living in Portland for the last 5 years. That's where she's from, and we tried to buy a house because we felt like it was the right thing to do, and in as much that
Keeping up with the Joneses.
yeah, kind of. It was like we were seeking some kind of stability, because when you are living without a paycheck and this kind of thing, eventually it gets a little tiring.
Yeah.
You know, I've been in a lot of bands that came really close to doing things. I've had lots of individual high level experiences, but until they tie together in the music career, you're still left treading water at best. And so, yeah, there was a little bit of, okay, you know what? I need a rest. I need a break. We're just going to buy a house. We'll rent out part of it, and, you know, we'll settle down for a little bit. And there was a real natural feeling of that feels good.
Well, it is. It's kind of like it's guaranteed then.
Right. Yeah.
Once you get your mortgage payment,
that animal brain can kind of go
it's
to sleep for a
comfort.
little while now.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You checked off an important box, and that's huge. That's absolutely valid. And but the universe didn't have that in mind for us, because we tried to buy the house, and turned out there was a lawsuit hidden in the estate from which it was being sold, which our realtors didn't explain to us, even though I pointed it out to them.
Oh, nice.
They sent us this title report that you get, and it was buried, in a stack of emails about things I've never heard of, like house inspections and property alignment documents, and just like, why am I seeing any of this? Like, it's where the fence, like, what's, why? And so I sent it to the realtor. I said, just tell me that if we're good on this. And they wrote back clearly, absolutely, totally clear. And it just so happened that we had to have a lawyer review some documents for some financing things. And he said, everything's great except for this Liz Pendens. And it's like, okay, that's Latin. And so that makes me nervous. and
anything that's Latin is serious.
And he's like, oh yeah, well, it's basically a lawsuit against the property. But don't worry, 90% of these go away as soon as you offer the money. I'm like, okay, well, I'll take your word on it, but now I'm scared. And anyway, we did offer the money, and it did not go away. And so now we're in really hot water. And forever, it leaves me, I see so often, it's like, why is it that you hire someone who's supposed to be a professional, who is a professional in their field, and they can miss such obvious things, and yet they can continue in their field? If I do that as a musician, if I come out and I forget to tune one of my strings, which is basically the same, I won't last through the gig.
Yeah.
I don't care how bad the bar is, they will pull you off stage.
Yeah.
So as a musician, you go, how is it this kind of mediocrity allowed to thrive where I'm paying hundreds of thousands of dollars, but yet it's rampant, So
no, people they're not passionate about those lines of work though either.
Well,
it's kind of that's settling in, like you said.
And that's a curious aspect about, is it a motivational thing? If it was the owner, would they have missed it? And so it opens up a lot of thoughts, and of course not the smallest bit being that we're only human and we're going to err, So, but I find myself thinking a lot about those sorts of things, which again is kind of a product of not driving in a straight line in your life,
So you got an RV instead of a house.
So instead, thank goodness we managed to get out. It cost us some money with a lawyer to get out of it, because they never did sign the documents they promised us to guarantee us that we wouldn't get sued if we bought this house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so eventually we just pulled the plug and walked away. And so, but at that point, just before we chose to pull the plug, which had been 2 months of our life committed, we thought, you know what, maybe we should go explore different cities. And so that's what we did is we bought an RV, and we thought, let's go and check out this amazing country. We really were only interested in the western part, for personal reasons. One mainly being that we like being near ski hills. So yeah, we traveled around, and that really kind of led to more support of this thought of, the more free we can make our mind, the more possibilities open up in our life that we had no idea were waiting for us. But we had to embrace the chaos of not knowing to allow change to happen.
That was one of my questions, actually, was about chaos. What are the advantages of chaos?
Okay, that's not very chaotic that came up.
I know.
It's very coincidental.
I don't know.
Universe is in alignment.
Because you talk about chaos.
And probably exactly from previous conversations. Well, in Chinese medicine, and that was, I should mention that when I did have that really hard nervous breakdown, the main way I came out of it was meditation and also going to university in a school that does energy healing, which is basically studying ancient forms of healing, which is in that school, Chinese healing, Ayurvedic healing, which is Indian healing, and First Nations healing, Native American healing. And they take it to a whole new level of when you know thyself, when you know this knowledge that's in our body versus the mind that's dominating nowadays. If you really know this aspect of your body wisdom, you can start to open up all kinds of new possibilities in yourself. And that notion of chaos is really important in Chinese medicine, where they actually want to instigate chaos in your system so that it will balance itself. Because basically what we usually have happen is when we get stressed, our shoulders might get tight. Everyone has something they can point to in their body. And that's because our body is holding the tension, the stress in that specific part. And energetically, it's like a magnet. We've got electricity running through our muscles. We create an energy field around that muscle. But if we can release that energy, if we can stir it up, create chaos, the body will naturally try to line it back up into a natural flow and help your muscles relax. So Chinese medicine wants chaos, basically, because your body should always be changing. Because, like you said, we've got stimulus constantly happening around us.
Yeah.
And rather than trying to control the stimulus, the news, everything, we just got to kind of roll with it. And so when we were in the RVs, that's really what it was too. It's like every day you're in a different place.
How long does it take to park one of those things?
It depends.
That must have been, was that harder to learn than the violin?
The joke is that, that's how you get divorced quickly is, to park your RV with your spouse. Fortunately, we did a lot of camping out in the wide open, so it was a lot easier than that. We'd just go out into a lot of states allow you to park in the woods or in the desert is especially good for that. And so basically we spent a year unplugged from what we typically spend time doing, which is a really powerful act in itself, right down to not doing the regular sort of relaxation things. I used to love to golf, and I didn't golf the whole time, and it's surprised the heck out of my dad. You got nothing to do? Why aren't you going golfing? And I didn't know what I was doing either. Honestly, I was kind of like, what am I doing? Just hanging out. But I was really, really, really ready to just hang out for a while. And in the end, I feel like I just unplugged from all these influences that I'd gotten used to. My brain going, okay, you're gonna have to teach in a couple of days, so you got this to do and that to do. And now I'm feeling more ready to step back into my life, and I'm looking at doing music in a different way, generating career things, looking at real estate differently. And so letting that chaos reorganize myself and come to more of an honest place in my life, which I think is what RVing is all about. And it's just unfortunate that most people wait until they're old and therefore in their mind free enough to do that, because we think we have to have money in the bank to save, to make sure that all the boxes are checked, right?
I like that. I mean, as far as getting rid of everything, because you don't know what's good and what's you just have it. That's just habit.
Right. Exactly.
Until you just stop everything.
Totally. Yeah.
And then reassess.
It surprises yourself.
Huh.
Totally. And it's in subtle ways, it's not, sometimes you can point to it, sometimes you can't. And then it's accumulation of all that together, I'd say.
Tell me about, I know it's on these questions too, about your hiking and music.
Oh, yeah. So the place we spent a lot of time in was Sedona, Arizona. And in Arizona, you can park anywhere in the desert, basically. They're very good about that. In Sedona, it's known because there's a lot of red rocks. They call them red rocks, which is there's a lot of iron in the earth there. And energetically, that, as a magnet, that's a giant magnet. And they call it vortex energy. So it's spiraling energy. And that's, when we do yoga, we kind of create little vortexes in our body. That's why we feel refreshed and cleaner somehow, inside when we do yoga. So when you go stand in the rocks, it does the same thing, basically, unless your mind is really powerfully committed to that not happening.
Okay.
And usually what happens then is you feel uncomfortable and you leave.
Oh, okay.
Quite seriously, that's what happens in Sedona. You either love it or you hate it.
Huh.
And we loved it a lot. And I'll just sidetrack to say that when I was there was a film that was made 2 years prior by a film company that saw me perform in Portland. And they heard my story about my voice and my music like I'm sharing with you. And they said, we'd love to film you, and if it turns into something great. Well, it turned out they put it into film festivals, and while we were parked outside of Sedona, I got a phone call saying it's been accepted to the Illuminate Film Festival, which takes place in Sedona.
Yeah.
And so
that's coincidental.
Well, yeah, then we're 10 miles away, and this is the thing about chaos. Like when we embrace it, the universe has order that we cannot understand. We're starting to understand that there is something else, when you get into quantum mechanics and stuff. But I swear it's stuff like that happens more and more the more I've tried to not be in control of things. And so I said, well, we're here, I'll play music at it. And so I went and played music, and it was really well received. I got to share some of these things, and it actually ended up winning the best short documentary at this festival, which was totally blew my mind, and created this whole movement for me of being in Sedona. I met a whole bunch of people, a lot of friends that felt like good friends, people that you really felt like you resonate with.
Yeah.
Your vibrations are matching. And so we want to go back and see what happens, see where things open up to. And one of the possibilities that I'm curious about is taking people into these Red Rocks, where they've got actually 2 million people a year going to this town of 10,000 people just to walk in the Red Rocks. I would like to be there as a guide. You get guides that take you into the wilderness, but I want to take you into the wilderness of the energy, the wilderness of how music interacts in our life if we give it a chance. And so I imagine maybe, taking several people up into the rocks and having this kind of conversation with them, and then playing some music to help them experience it. And, that probably will pay better than my $50 gigs at whatever bar that, takes me 6 hours to load in and out and have to be in a bar environment all night.
That would be more fun for sure. Playing and then going on a hike.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the bar is actually kind of like candy fun. It's the dopamine hit. And the other one takes courage, because I am nervous about the idea because I've never done it before. Every time you go to do the tour, it's going to be different. I'm not going to say the same things.
Yeah,
it's going to depend on what they say to me, and will I know what to say? I don't know. Will I play the right piece? And I'll do a lot of improvisation, but trying to trust that more and more. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, what about your music too? I wanted to make sure that you have an album coming out.
Yeah. So I have an album of live music.
Out now-ish, right?
Quote unquote. Yeah. I mean, I'd love to have the ego high of the labels, releasing that November 1st, and y'all can get it at HMV or whatever.
Yeah.
But no, I've got an album that I am in the process of releasing, and it'll be up on my website soon, which is tylercarsonmusic.com. The album's called Time and Tide, and the music is really about those subjects. It's about what happens when we go with the tide, let time move through, and see where it takes us. And the music is actually all live performance. A lot of it is improvised, and so it's very much my life through music, the time and tide of my life through music. And in this album in particular, I'm using a loop pedal, and which allows me to access both parts of our psyche, which is when we improvise, we get into that freedom stage that is beyond the mind. That's a band who is improvising, and really, when you say, boy, that band's on fire, it's like they're reading each other's minds. They're playing as one instrument. That's when they're communicating beyond the mind. And that's when people go crazy. That's when you get the interest in music again, where people are like, I cannot live without this.
Yeah, the Grateful Dead type effect.
Because literally we can't, because that's just the musical version of connecting with human beings beyond our minds. And thank God, because my mind's enough to wrestle with on my own, let alone trying to manage other people's.
Yeah.
And so this music is also the improvisation part I think addresses that experience. And then the loop pedal allows me to access the part where we are so used to hearing music that does give us a dopamine hit, does allow us to feel comfortable, does allow us to have an idea of what's coming next, that I record different parts so it ends up sounding like a full band. And somehow it married together enough that it never gets stagnant, which, as we heard earlier in the podcast with our little Casio drum machine,
Well,
once it loops more than twice, it gets a little boring.
$35 has its limitations, I guess, but I
don't know.
I like this little guy.
Yeah. I mean, there's been albums that absolutely, no joke, hit albums that will use something like that, or cheaper, because they just needed a certain sound and it worked.
Yeah.
It's all about creative use. So yeah, so that's the new album, and then the documentary will come out next year.
Cool.
It's called Living Music, and I don't know how it's going to come out yet. But once it's done the festival circuit, we can start talking with the producers about how it gets distributed and that kind of thing.
Sweet.
So yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure I hit on all my questions, sir. Do you have anything?
I wonder if I should play.
Can you play
an
us out?
actual piece of something?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it would be awesome if you play us out.
Yeah, and I can get a little bit more comfortable. Last time I was kind of wrestling, not really lined up for playing. So see what I can come up with. I'll play. There's a few pieces that kind of come to mind in terms of tying together some of what we've been talking about, and I haven't played this one in a while, but I think I'll do it anyway. It's a tune called Fiddle, aptly named by my bandmates. Very creative, thank you guys. And
Can you play it on the Casio?
Yeah, right. Exactly. You got a fiddle button on that thing. Yeah. The funny part about this was I wrote it in a during a sound check, and I thought I was just goofing off, and waiting for them to get, and Tyler, stop playing for a sec. But instead they're like, dude, that's cool. I'm like, what is that? Oh, it's just a riff. And if they hadn't pointed that out to me, I wouldn't have even kept it as a song.
Oh.
So that's some of the things, is like our best ideas, sometimes we don't even realize we're having them. And I certainly wasn't trying for it. But this combines the traditional fiddle, so people will recognize that as a fiddle tune at the end. It combines a little bit of improvisation and rock and roll, and it combines some innovation on the instrument, because usually you only use a bow with a violin, but I really like strumming or plucking the instrument like a guitar, because a guitar gets rhythm and a violin doesn't get rhythm in the same way.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is fiddle.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
My
It was
pleasure.
a pleasure chatting with you.
Totally.
And I think we got to leave it at that, man.
Yeah, for
All
sure.
right, have a good one.
Okay.